Today we're going to talk a little bit about harmony. We're going to talk about how this ultimately kind of crosses over with gender and gender identity. Is this concept of numerology and how that ultimately emerges within the lived experiences of people, right? So, harmony, when we think about music and music theory, you have the numbers 1, 3, and 5, right? Which create a harmonious chord that is pleasant to the ears. Well, that ultimately happens within gender as well. So the idea is that as an androgynous person, you are both masculine and feminine. You have masculine attributes, you have feminine attributes, but they all coalesce in one seamless aesthetic that you understand to be yourself as an androgynous male. So I see myself as an androgynous person as a man. I understand myself to be a man, but I ultimately understand that I have a degree of feminine attributes as well. But going back to the triad, you have, the Madonna, Oshimade, and then you have Eshu. The first numeral that I want to talk about is 1, right? This is the monad. The monad is just simply the trickster archetype that emerges because you are androgynous. We say, as Shakespeare famously said, I'm a jack of all trades, right? Of all trades, master of none, more off better than a master of one. Because the trickster archetype is ultimately whole. The triad spiritually represents the Godhead, the 3 Godheads that you have. So it is the Madonna, Oshimade, and Eshu, right? And then the pentad are the godparents. The godparents are the aspect of God, of Daddy God, who shows up as not only God the Father, but also God the Son. When you think back to the story of Hagar in the desert, it was these 2 aspects of God that showed up in the desert. You had Obatala, which culturally we understand are Obatala, who was Daddy God. For Black and brown people, this is a camino of God that we've already named, an aspect of God that we identified as being Obatala, who is the primordial mother. And it is Obatala who sends the Madonna, the divine mother, to Hagar, who says, Hagar, baby girl, it's okay, just mirror me, the divine mother. So these become your Godheads, the divine masculine, the divine feminine, and your 3 Godheads, right, that are protecting you. And then you have the trickster archetype. So, what's the purpose of the triad? Why is that important, and how does gender relate to that, and consciousness and all that? What does all that have to do with anything? Well, I like the way that Marie von France talks about it. She said their mythology provides a meaning for life that makes them feel a harmonious part of the entire cosmos, preserving their connection to the past. So, for me, what that means is that I recognize that not only do the Orishas connect me to my cultural and historical past as a Black person, but also the way that these sort of images of the Godhead, of your godparents, how they kind of emerge within people within your family, within your life, how, the triad kind of is what empowers you in the present to be who you are, and how you can tap into them to begin to create a life project, a life story based off of, just your talents that they've kind of given you, your gifts. Back at 1, the wholeness, the integrity of the archetype of the person that ultimately emerges. And so, like Marie von France says, that it creates a degree of a coherent and cohesive narrative identity of the person and how they ultimately end up living their lives.